And joins me now in the studio is presenter of the Kent Film Club, Chris DC, here to talk about the hot topic of etiquette in the cinema and the controversial documentary of Louis Theroux, Inside the Manosphere. So Chris, we've kind of talked a little bit about the Manosphere, but this documentary has just been newly released on Netflix. It's got a lot of talk on social media at the moment. Tell me what you think about it maybe so far upon what you've seen and what you've heard.
I find this so fascinating because there's this idea of, and I suppose you saw it with Trump in America as well, that question of who's enfranchised, who's disenfranchised, who feels that they are represented, whose voices are being heard. And then in a way sort of almost saying, and I think the film One Battle After Another, which did well at the Oscars, also touches on that, is almost like saying left wing, right wing, where do you stand? Everyone has flaws, but let's almost try and make that into a conversation. It's also, I mean, I think Michael Moore started this off. Do you remember with Bowling for Columbine, and a few years later with the documentary that came out just before, as it turned out, George W. Bush's re-election, and that whole, Fahrenheit 9/11, and that question that really gets to the zeitgeist of where we stand and how that will affect our vote. And the way that these days people will go, and on social media, often it says so much about people's characters, the online self versus what they're like offline, and people who go on social media and start acting in a very vicious way in some cases that you think that's not the tame person at the office. So I think this is a very fascinating way of saying that do we all have, we used to use the expression of multiple hats, we all have different personas, and sometimes it's like, sometimes you might have a few drinks or something like that, and a different side of your personality will emerge. I think this really gets to the heart, and it's scary. I know women's groups have said it's essential viewing, but there are very few voices, female voices heard in this. But what does that say about where we are today?
And, there's a lot of talk in it about the red pill content, which comes from The Matrix. So this has obviously been a theme that's started a long time ago, but seems maybe now with politics and things happening in the world, it's becoming more and more common. Tell me about when that started with The Matrix and what the first reactions to that were, maybe when it first came out. I
remember, and I can even tell you the day I saw it. It was I think the 18th or the 11th of June 1999. And it's almost like in Sliding Doors has the same thing. You take this pill, this will happen. You take the other coloured pill, something else will happen. And that is life. How many of us don't look back and think, what if, what if? But these documentaries are also very clever at really saying that some people don't actually necessarily have that reflective mode. That sometimes people just go all guns blazing and say, right, this is the way we should be. And often if we were perhaps a bit more reflective or self-critical, perhaps we could be a bit calmer. Maybe some people don't want calm. They want anger, because anger is what people will listen to.
Yeah, and in terms of documentation and films, they hold a certain level of responsibility. Is it good or bad, do you think, to influence people through the use of films on maybe everyday issues or topical moments in politics?
Well, one thing it's going to do, and Louis Theroux is brilliant at this with some of the documentaries he's made about people who later it turned out were even more ghastly than we may have thought they were eccentric, and the Jimmy Savile one is a good example. But what they tend to do is ask those really important questions about what makes people tick in a particular time and place. They get to that very heart of the sort of questions that are going to polarize us, the way that you pit people, often in the same communities, often in the same workplaces, against each other. And I think in that sense it's important, but also it's difficult viewing, because for me, that sort of polarization is great to observe, but also, it's just as when somebody says to me, which football team do you support, or what's your view on this? Sometimes you think, hang on a minute, whatever answer I give, in the eyes of some people, will be the wrong one.
Well, and now we've also got this other topic about film etiquette.
Ooh.
Do you believe such a term exists, and is there any proper way we should act in a movie theatre? As a film expert, what would be your ideal way?
Well, I literally practice what I preach, because I go to the cinema all the time.
Well, that's it.
My fear, and I walk, I feel my heart pounding. What if somebody's in my seat? And it has happened. And somebody you walk into, often it might be an almost empty auditorium, but somebody's chosen the very seat where you're meant to be. And you then have to either find another seat, which is actually the worst thing you can do, because then you're taking somebody else's seat potentially. Or people who walk in and they think, oh, there's no one sitting in front of me, I'll just put my coats in front of me. And then, of course, somebody's in the seat, and they're like, well, hang on, but somebody's seat, coat is draped over my seat, and the person reluctantly wants to remove them. There's all these things, people making noise, putting their phones on. I was at a cinema last night, and a couple just arrived as the film was beginning, and because it was all dark, they put their light on, but for some reason, they seemed to be illuminating the entire auditorium. And I was almost like blinded at one point, and I was just thinking, where is this coming from? Is the light being reflected? It's things like that. I wonder if people forget that they're not in their living rooms. I feel like almost a subject of Louis Theroux here. Through here, you've got me animated on this, and it's very interesting. And there have been times, I'll be honest, I've gone to see a film a second time with a different audience just because my view the first time was very much coloured by what I was witnessing in the auditorium. And I saw Jojo Rabbit one year, twice, one with a younger audience who were laughing at some of the humour, which I found really uncomfortable. Then I watched it with a much more civilised, older audience, and suddenly the irony of the film really came out. So we don't all have time to watch films multiple times, but I do think that watching the audience is as important sometimes as watching the film.
So as an avid appreciator of films and going to the cinema, do you reckon that there should be something put in place to prevent people maybe ruining the film for others by talking too loud during it, being on their phones, maybe eating loud crisps or something?
Absolutely. I mean, staff come in. I mean, in some cinemas, sometimes it actually is over extreme that they sometimes come in and they almost like stand in front of everyone and they have a little device just to see if anybody is recording the film. And there have been occasions, like watching a horror film, a really quiet moment, and suddenly somebody appears, and once I actually jumped out of my seat, it was just a member of cinema staff. But to be fair, they're making sure that things are okay. And there are times when things like the lighting isn't, or the lights aren't dimmed, or actually I was at a cinema last week, the film didn't come on, and it turned out there was a problem with the print, and they had to reset it, so somebody had to go out and tell them. It's things like that that you just need to have a dialogue. What you don't want, shall I tell you what the worst thing happened once? Somebody shouted at another person in the audience because they were making a lot of, had their phone on, and that disruption was worse than the disruption of the person with the phone. So don't police it yourself. Okay,
well, I wish you the best in your future cinema. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. All right, you've been watching Kent Tonight Live here on KMTV. There's more news made just for you throughout the evening. We'll be back here at 8 p.m. See you then. Bye-bye.